Sharon Stone, welcome to the Daily Social Distancing Show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so
Um,
honored to meet you.
the honor is all mine because, I mean, you are a living legend and an icon. You've been in some of the most iconic movies, telling some of the most iconic stories, playing some of the most iconic characters. But your new book that you have out tells us really the story of how you got to that place. And one of the biggest things that I learned about you that I'd never known before reading this book is that 20 years ago, you almost died. Please walk me through that and why you decided, you know what, I'm going to share this really painful, harrowing story with people about a life that they never knew that I lived.
I had to think about where did I want to start, and I thought maybe I should just start with me and figure myself out first. And so I
Wow.
thought I should look at my life so I could see an authentic look at my life. I just felt like once I had that near death experience, it was the authentic things that became really of value to me and of
Mm.
interest to me and of what I really, how do we know, once we have that death or near death experience, we're like, I'm not going to waste my time on unimportant things from now on. I want to do the things that are truthful and honest. I want to move forward truthful and honestly. And I really believe that's the biggest change that's happened in my life from that.
Your book, The Beauty of Living Twice. A lot of people through this book are going to be introduced to Sharon Stone, the young girl who's experiencing trauma growing up. And then Sharon Stone, the woman who is trying to make her name in an industry that, I mean, we think of as being sexist today, but man, when you describe it in the book, it really, really shows us how far Hollywood has come and how far it still needs to go. So let's talk first about the things you experienced in your childhood. What were you hoping to achieve by sharing some of these stories with an audience that will genuinely be shocked that you went through these things as a child?
Well, I think that it's very important to understand which things belong to us and which things don't, just for starters. When you have trauma, you have to understand, in order to sort it out, what's your responsibility and what isn't. Some of my trauma was sexually related. And so when you're a child, obviously, none of that is yours, none of that
Mm.
belongs to you. When there's sexual trauma, our whole way that we have been taught to deal with it is it's a secret. It's a
Mm.
secret, it's a shame, it's, oh, don't talk about that. We're not supposed to ever talk about that. Oh, shh. My whole impetus for talking about it is that we need to, just like there's lice checks at school, there should be sexual abuse checks at school. I think sexual abuse is probably a bigger problem than lice. So I think we should be having these standard checks: preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, college. I mean, I think all of this stuff needs to be really regulated in the school system, just like everything else, because this stuff starts in the home. It doesn't start with a button under somebody's desk in a business office.
Yeah, it really does start in the home, and we start to see those effects in society, and those effects show up in many different ways. Um, one of the most shocking for me, I think, came in the book when you were talking about one of your most famous movies of all time, Basic Instinct, and how the iconic scene that everybody around the world grew to know you for and the movie for was a moment when you yourself were tricked into the scene. Tell me about that and how you felt, not just about being tricked, but then how you figured a way to own your power post that happening.
Okay, well, I think I talked about it as much as pretty much I want to in the book, but I do think that my mother summed it up very well in a phone call that she got, where someone called her at home right after the movie came out and said, "How do you feel about your daughter's nudity in this film?" And my mother said, frankly, I was much more concerned about her playing a sociopathic serial killer, but thank you for calling. Um, because I think that people made so sensationalized the fact that I was naked as God made me, and
Right, right,
were
right,
a little bit less concerned that I was playing a really violent serial killer
right.
with no conscience at all.
Hmm.
So I think the fact, first of all, that this thing was so sensationalized was also the hook the studio gave it to sell the movie. and the
Ah,
hope that they're still giving it to try to sell the director's cut release 30 years later.
right, right,
So
right.
frankly, I think it's more of a publicity scam than it is in reality as big a deal as everyone really made it.
Oh,
And my power, I think, came from me knowing that. I think my power came from me staying in my dignity and understanding that I was really great in the part, that I really did a great performance. I was good in the movie, and people believed me as a sociopathic serial killer. So much so that their bigger concern was that I was naked, not that I might run around killing people everywhere. So I think that we probably should, at this point in life, start putting it back in perspective and stop playing the studio PR game.
I love that. I completely love that, and I feel like that's what the book is, and that's who you are as a person. You know, you're somebody who tells it like it is. You know, many people may not know this about Sharon Stone, but you are a fierce advocate for human rights, and one of the causes closest to your heart has been fighting for people who are suffering with HIV/AIDS. You know, and that's something that has decimated so many millions of people around the globe. And for a long time, it was a hidden secret, not just in America, but in South Africa and in many places. And now, finally, we're slowly climbing out of the hole of shame that was associated with HIV/AIDS. What are some of your proudest moments in seeing this journey get this far? And what do you hope to still see going forward?
One of the great things that I got to help do was raise the money that funded the research to invent nevirapine, which stopped mother to child transmission.
Wow.
So when we got to take nevirapine to South Africa, and it became a law that pregnant women had to take, HIV positive women had to take
Mhm.
nevirapine, so that this stopped, you know, hundreds and thousands of
Right, right.
of babies to be born without HIV AIDS. This was remarkable. But then all of a sudden, and particularly in South Africa, um, these women had this terrible choice because they couldn't breastfeed their children or they would
Right.
then
Yes.
transmit HIV AIDS. But then guess what? There was no clean water. So we were giving their babies malaria because they're
Right.
walking with these gas cans full of filthy water on their head to make the formula milk. So I went to South Africa and I was like, what are we going to do? And so I worked with a company about putting in water wells. You know, I've been back a few times and I've gone to these girls' schools, and these girls, they were curtsying to me and looking down and calling me sir, because they were taught that any important person was a sir. And I think one of my most rewarding experiences was telling these girls, I'm like you, I'm a woman, I'm not a man. And every important person isn't a sir. You're important. And I spent the entire day teaching these women, these young women, that not everybody that was important was a man, and they were allowed to look up and look me in the face because they'd spent their whole life looking down. It just, to me, that may have been one of the greatest days ever of my
Wow.
life.
It's beautiful, really. I mean, it's yeah, it must be life-changing.
It's, it probably sounds small, but it's really big. It is. It's just so big.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think that's what most people will connect to in not just your stories, but in how honest you are in telling them in the book, is that it is a collection of small that really combines to create the biggest big that is Sharon Stone. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for caring. And yeah, I really hope everybody reads your story to understand you a little bit more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.